Hello, my name is Brett Hancock, and this is a really good question. I'm going to do my best to give a good answer. This is, I think, a fundamental question because really, I mean, how does a human being know what to believe? Um, most people will live their life seeking to have a good time, right? Pleasure, whatever. But in us, there's something that's tugging away at all of us to say, what's the meaning of life? Why are we here? I mean, these really deep philosophical existential questions. If people will stop, I mean, they're by design in all of us, right? And so this kind of question, well, who do I trust? How do we know what happens when I die? I mean, why do we die? Why am I here? Again, what's purpose in life? All these kind of questions. So when somebody asks the question, like here, like Joe, it's a really good question. Is it enough to have one source of authority when it comes to religion or worldview? See, this is a really basic question because the idea in Christianity, the claims of the state church, Catholic or Orthodox, would say um, that the Pope, well, at least the Catholics, the Pope has ultimate authority, and he is the vicar of Christ. He's the intercessor between Christ, and the Christ being between with God, and of course actually I guess Pope. I assume that they see it this way: Pope to Mary, to Christ, to God. I think is how they see it. But like those kind of questions, like, well, who do I believe? I mean, we don't have the Book of Mary. It's like popes come along throughout the ages for the last 2,000 years, and they disagree with each other sometimes. I mean, one will say this, and then centuries later, it's like, well, now here's the current position. And the claim by the state church is that, well, at least by Catholics, is that whoever's the current pope, he's speaking on behalf of God. And even though maybe over time you can actually see kind of a little bit of a roller coaster of things bouncing around, well, that's the Holy Spirit doing that. And it's like when I read my Bible, I don't get that impression at all. I see a consistent message, Old Testament, New Testament. And so, from what I see by studying the early Christian writings, the ante-Nicene Fathers, which would be the first few centuries, together with Old Testament, New Testament, I see. Well, let's start with the Old Testament. I see events happening in the life of human beings from creation, from the time of creation. Ultimately, it leads to this nation of Israel that is descendant of Abraham. These promises that God gave Abraham, and that starting with him, that through his seed all nations would be blessed. And it starts to actually point to other ones in the future. We get to the time of King David, and it starts talking about one that would be the king that would sit on David's throne. Now, one thing to consider when we think about the word Messiah or Christ is both of those words, Christ from Greek, Messiah from Hebrew, both of those words means anointed. And so in the Old Testament, who was anointed? Prophets were anointed, kings were anointed, priests were anointed. And so the claims of these, that this, at least from the Christian interpretation of the Old Testament, is that, and I'm just talking about the New Testament, I'm not talking about exterior books or whatever, is that this would be all in one. There's all these elements that are scattered between different people in the Old Testament, that there would be the ultimate one that would be all in one. He would be the king that God has established over all humanity. He would be the ultimate intercessor, high priest between God and man. The book or the letter to the Hebrews in the New Testament speaks this way. So the question of, okay, is this a reliable source of authority? Well, I think the first place to start with, just even if somebody's not even religious, is like looking at the arguments in science of like the scientists that would argue um, that nature and physics and the laws of nature and the things that we observe in everyday life points to a designer, you know, um, versus the idea of an interpretation of Darwin's writings, with the origin of species, is that going back far enough in time, somehow things through the Big Bang, I mean, which is a different theory than Darwin's theory, but the Big Bang theory, right? That things just came into being, so somehow you got material matter, and given enough time, they could self-organize from simplicity to complexity, where you end up with human beings and things of this sort. And the amazing in ecology, just the how everything cooperates together in nature, that just given enough time, that would just happen, right? And so the intelligent design proponents would say, well, no, starting here, everything looks like design. So once you get convinced that, like, okay, things look like there's a designer, so there must be a really powerful being. When I look up at the cosmos, a really powerful being that created all these things and put all these things in order. So who is this being? Is this a god or whatever? So I would say you start there, right? And then it's like, then you go to, well, who is this? Well, we look by human beings. All of us have a conscience. We have certain right and wrong that's written on our hearts. We see children from a young age. They feel guilty when they lie or they disobey their parents or whatever. And so that would seem to point to, and I'm going to have to make this short, to a being that's described of in the scriptures, in the Bible, the Old Testament, from the people of Israel and from the Jews. And then, of course, the Jews that started the Christian religion, that the promises in the Old Testament to Abraham that all nations would be blessed. So, that King James word, sometimes, ethnos in Greek, or the Hebrew word, I can't think what it is, but would be nations or Gentiles, right? Those that in some context of the scriptures would include the people of Israel, the Jews. In some other context, a lot of times in the New Testament, we show a distinction to refer to these nations outside of Israel. But in any case, that all people would be blessed through this Messiah, through this one that would come, and he would be the king, the son of David, and that he would be the ultimate judge, that he would come back again and judge all people. So this is the claims of the Bible. So what about things that fall outside of that? What about the Book of Mormon? What about the Quran, the Hadith, together with the Muslim religion and all those things? And this is a really deep question. And so I would say, in brief, because I got to make this short, is that those books can actually be proved wrong if we trust in the scriptures. But then the question was how do we know we trust in these scriptures? And I think, if somebody wants to meet, I think the evidence in the scriptures themselves, together with what we can observe in everyday life, kind of a little bit like I was describing, would point us to put trust in these scriptures and to the Christ. Now, a friend of mine, Elliot Nash, if you want to Google this on YouTube, did a really great documentary interviewing scholars or whatever in this video that shows the historical evidence that Jesus of Nazareth really lived, right? So there's many messianic prophecies about him. One of them being in Daniel chapter 9, says that this Messiah, or this Christ in Greek, would have to come before the temple was destroyed. Well, historically, we know the temple was destroyed in Jerusalem in 70 AD. So this Messiah, or this Christ, would have to come before that. Well, that by itself would point to possibly Jesus of Nazareth as being that, right? So ultimately, it's hard to do it in this short video, and I need to end this. But that listening to him, and his words are amazing in the Gospels. If you really haven't read the Gospels much, I encourage you to read them. The Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 5, is amazing. If human beings would go by that, so many of the problems in the world would go away. But super challenging words, right? And so the Bible, the Christian Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, Jewish Old Scriptures of the Old Testament, together with the New Testament record of the Jews that wrote those writings. A couple of them were written by a few Gentiles, the book of Luke, Mark, but those pointed to listening to this Messiah as the ultimate authority. So there's a lot of things that popes would say in the state church that would actually undermine the things that Jesus says. And so if we base ourselves in the Christian faith, then we would have to a lot of times dismiss a lot of those things that the popes, different popes would say, for instance, or things that Muhammad said in the Quran, because they actually go against what Jesus said or what the historical account records about his life. Early Christian, first few centuries of their discussion about these things. I encourage you to read some of those, the Ante-Nicene Fathers. Anyway, hopefully that helps you. Some religions rely on holy books. Yeah, exactly. Which is more reliable or stable. Hopefully some of the answers I've given here will help you in this regard. So I'll end this video here. All right, God bless.